All right, so one thing that trailers and RVs need to have is some kind of lighting to help you find the door at night. So I originally got these lights right here, and although they're nice, I think that they're just a little too big for this particular trailer. I'm not so pleased with how far they stick out, and honestly, I want to be able to have just enough light to be able to find the door, unless if I want to light up the camp area. And for that, well, I'm going to be having a roof rack on this, which means that it will allow me to go ahead and put on exterior lighting all the way around the camper if I want to, and control that lighting separate from the door lighting. Because guys, honestly, there's nothing worse than somebody that lights up their whole campsite plus the one next to it. So this way I'll have an option to piss off my neighbors. So I'm actually gonna be getting something much smaller than this, more closely related to like a license plate light. Now to do so, I have to have some wires run, and I need to know where I'm gonna run them at. Well, right now, my options are basically right here, which is almost center of the door, but not completely. And then we've got an option right here as well, which would be right in front of the door grab. So I think I'm actually going to go with that option. So I need to get a hole drilled here, and I need to take that foam up top and burn out just enough that I can run 2 little wires. So the first step is going to be to remove this insulation here. And you know what, instead of burning out a corner of this, because I'm pretty sure I'll overdo that, I'm just gonna try and take a razor blade and see if I can cut off a little square all the way down. There we go. It ain't pretty, but it'll do. All right, so I have both holes made now, and I've got 2 wires, one white for negative, one red for hot. I'm just gonna leave little piggy tails about that far out because I shouldn't need much more than that when I'm hooking up whatever light I decide to get. And I can finally start working on that wiring because we got everything, well, most of everything that we need to do so. All right, so here we are, guys. We got all of the electrical all lined up, and starting from this end here, we've got a little bulkhead thing here that the wires go through, and when tightened, it will tighten around the wire. I've got a bunch of different sizes of these, so depending on the wire that is going through the front of the trailer, it will be nice and waterproof. Next, I got some of the leftover trailer wire. I've got electrical tape of different colors just in case if I wanted it, and of course regular black tape. Now this here is the wire cutter that I had, and being as to how I'm going to be cutting a lot of wire, I really did not feel like having to deal with a lot of this here. So I went and I got a good one that cuts and strips the wire all in one action, which I think is pretty nifty. And of course, to cut straight wires here, I've got this, as well as to pull on wires if needed. Here we've got a bunch of male-female connectors because I want to have quick connects on a few things. Here I probably won't be using much of these, but I do have them if I need them. And then I picked up these guys here. What these are is a heat shrink and solder all in one, and for that, of course, I got a nice little torch. Then I've got a pen marker because, well, I've got to mark quite a bit of stuff, including one of these thick wires here that will go down to the ground. For all of the 12 volt, I got 14 AWG, and I got 100 feet of this. If this isn't enough, well, then I have way too much electrical in this little trailer. Here I have 8 AWG, and I got 100 of this. I won't need 100 of it, but I figured that for the extra $2 that it came in at for 100 versus 50, figured this will work perfectly fine. Then I've got some of this regular house wire here. Now you might be wondering, well, why do you have that if you've got that? Well, this here is for when I am hooked up to shore power. This here is gonna work now. I know it's not multi-strand, but many people use this, including the big manufacturers in their RVs. You just got to make sure that it's not moving around a lot, which mine won't be. Then moving up here, we've got the exterior lights that I got to replace those big ones. I think these here will work much better. I did put these up to a battery and they are really bright. And they will go right here and shine down on top of the light. I think that little profile looks a whole lot better than the alternative option that I had. Then I've got a whole bunch of little 12-volt plugs and USB plugs. Most of these are USB plugs here because I wanted to make sure that I had plenty of those. I do have some 120-volt plugs as well. So you can see here and here, and they all have the little USB, except for one of them that was going to be for the TV, but that may be being changed. Then right beside it here, we've got little caps for screws, because these will cover up the screws that will be holding this on. Remember how I told you guys that I had something to cover all of this? Well, it finally came in. I cut it yesterday. All right, so hopefully you guys can kind of see what I'm planning here. I think that once I get this screwed up there, all of the little switches and everything will be in this panel. And of course, there will be screws holding this on all the way down. And I think that's going to look pretty darn nice. And that also allows me to have access to the electrical whenever I possibly need it. So we've got our little screws. Well, these little things here are screw cap covers. So the screw basically goes through that, and the little cover covers it up and snaps in place. So all you see is that. And this is what it ends up looking like. And I think going all the way down that, it won't bother me one bit, because any of the controls will be somewhere in between those screw cap covers anyway. So now as we come into the trailer here, you can see the wires for those two lights and the little square that I cut out for them. You can also see the dips that I bent in here so that I can make a pass. Now you can also see that evidently I forgot to melt one of those. The front of this kind of looks kind of cool if you ask me, but as you can see, it definitely melted out a lot more than what is ever going to be needed. So I may end up taking and maybe once I run some wires in there, maybe do a little bit of spray foam in there as well, just to fill in a little bit more insulation, but we'll see about that when the time comes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut a bunch of little pieces to span this area here, because as you see, if I'm running wires, all the wires are what? They're just gonna fall down. Now I did go ahead and put these little things in here, except for I don't think it's gonna work quite the way that I was hoping. So I'm probably gonna end up pulling those down and figuring out something else to hold the wires, because I would think I would like a lot of the wires just to go ahead and stay on this, because I do want the shore power wire to be secured so that it's not rattling around or moving whatsoever. I'm going to run some of these wires and get back to you after that. All right, so what I ended up doing to be able to permanently hang these wires separately from the rest was I went and got some of these little staples. And well, they're not so little, but I was able to get them up into the gap that I have cut. Now I have one line ran of this house type wire, and now that's all that I should ever need running from the front to the back as far as that wire goes. However, I need wire that will go from the battery to the power unit as well. So now that I got that yellow one hung, I'm going to go ahead and hang that black and red wire through the exact same nails because there's room. As you guys can see, this is fairly thick wire as well, and this is multi-strand, so it won't have any problem being in the trailer here. It's actually made for automotive, so that's a positive. But now I'm gonna have to leave extra room hanging in this area here because I have to go around that fan. So I'm gonna have to make sure that whatever I do with all this wiring, that there is extra wire hanging down there and enough that it'll be able to go over around the fan, plus some maybe. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull a whole bunch of that wire. So we now have both the yellow and black and red wires run from the very back all the way through the cabinet area up through here. Now you might notice that this one doesn't have the nail, and that's because I want to make sure that I have enough pulling area and enough movement in there that I can take wire from the cabinet area when I go to put in the fan. So now, as you can see, I've got all of these nice and nailed in, going all the way down, all the way in the front, all the way there. And then we come out the front where either it'll loop out right up here or a little lower. Part of the reason why all that's not done yet, because I'm not sure exactly. And as you see back here, we got plenty of wire to do the wiring, and I'll probably end up snipping it back even further than that. But for now, I just wanted to make sure that I had enough to mess around with while I work on this. Now, I'm not worried about wiring the back of the galley yet, because honestly, that's just a set of lights in the roof, and everything else is all in the wall of the galley. Now what I got to do is figure out exactly where all of my switches and dials are going to go so that I can figure out how exactly I'm going to route those things. So what I do know is that there's going to be a light probably behind the fan right beside the TV area to light up more of the feet area. Then I'm going to put one like right here to light up the rest of the cab. And if I lay down, I want to be able to just up and hit the power button, right? So that means that everything else needs to be right in this area here. So that means that I need to run the power wires at least to that point. However, there's a little bit of a trick here because I want to be able to have most of the wiring actually connected to that black piece that goes up, which means that the wires actually only need to go to like the center of this. That way it gives me enough slack that I can disconnect and reconnect whenever needed. Alright, so as you guys can see here, I have marked out all of the joists on one side. On the front side of the joist I marked. So all of the joists are actually on this side of the line, you know, the same line that the staples are on. However, when I marked it out on the black piece of plastic, I ended up doing it on the opposite side somehow. So this is actually the second one of these that I have, because the first one's holes are completely in the wrong spot. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in this little heater inside the truck here. I'm gonna put some plastic over that door so that maybe this inside interior will warm up just a little bit, just enough that, you know, I'm not really super cold. All right, now that we got that going, I got the fan going and it's already kicking out some nice warm air here. I need to run 3 wires from the galley area to here, and then from here forward. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and run some wires from there to right about here where the console goes. And I'll run one that goes all the way to the front of the galley where there's going to be one 12-volt plug for charging my cell phone and that kind of thing. Temporarily, that piece that goes in here for the fan, I'm actually dropping that down from the top so that I can reroute these wires to make sure that they're actually going to fit. Alright, so this might be a little bit of a problem. So as it turns out, I probably should have made the square for that a little bit wider, because this does cover off quite a bit. And I made it exactly the 14 by 14 hole. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to fix that to be able to run these wires. Alright, so as you guys can see, what I did is I actually brought those wires to the outside of the board here. I drilled a couple of holes in and ran the wires through there. Then I nailed them into place to hold so that they would continue down. So I should be able to get all of the thinner wires where I was originally going to route these ones. Those ones shouldn't be any problem because it's thinner wire. There's more of them, but they can all pretty much lay flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and cover this back up with the insulation and keep moving on with running the wire. This is very repetitive, so I'm just gonna get back with you guys once I got all these run. I have 4 wires running to the front of the fan hole. So one is going to be for the power outlet that will be in the front of the trailer. One is for the interior lights, and one is for the exterior lights. And then I do end up having an extra one sitting here. So that can go for whatever I may want to run up front later on, but that doesn't mean that it'll be powered to anything. It's just there so that if I decide to add something in the future, I can go ahead and do so easily. Now you might be wondering why they are so short. Well, that would be because I want this piece along with all the electronics on it to be removable. The reason? Well, if I need to get up into here to rerun something or change out the lights or the switches or whatever, I can just remove this very easily and do so. So all of these are going to be getting put onto little plugs like this. Now unfortunately I couldn't find any that was the positive and negative all in one, so I will be having to do each and every one of these ends with a separate plug. I also re-ran the exterior door light, so that's what this loop here is. Alright, so now that I've got this taken care of, as I am working on the panel, which I'll get to here in a second, I can take them off of here, lay them out, tape them down onto the panel so that they're not messy, and hook them up properly. Now, what's all going on this panel? Well, there's actually two panels. There's the panel that goes on the back side here to cover that up, which is just one single light. And then there is this panel, which is going to have an extra piece of this over it, just to drop it down a little bit more, give it a little bit more rigidity. And that is going to be one touch switch, which is a dimmer switch as well. And it will have two rocker panel type switches on it, one for each side of the trailer. That way I don't have to have them both running and light up both doors if I don't want to. I can just run the main door that I'm currently using. And I think that's going to work out really nicely. And one thing that I thought of when I accidentally ran that fourth wire is that I can use that probably for the exterior light that will like shine down on the ground outside of the trailer whenever that time comes to put those on. So I'm happy with this so far. I think that it's coming out great. With this little heater in here, I think I'll be able to work on the panels no matter pretty much what temperature it is. I may end up having to put a plastic bag in this other door though, just to keep the heat confined to this area. But the next thing that is on the list is to get this panel done, or at least completely laid out and wired.